Welcome to the Man Cave Podcast with Dan Casper.
All right. Obviously, we all know where we're leading things off here this morning. Talking a little green and gold. Jeremy, I like this perspective, Jeremy. Jeremy with a quick text on that Shoe Doctors bullpen line. Thoughts of the game and heading into the offseason are mixed. First, huge props to the defense. Couldn't have played a much better game plan. But heading into the offseason, the need to add to the secondary or pass rush, they need to add. I would agree with that. Offense was a huge disappointment yesterday, and once again, the importance of Watson cannot be overlooked. Offense dug a hole and just couldn't get out of their own way. Injuries also caught up. I hope LaFleur and the coaching staff truly put some effort into upgrading special teams, and I wonder if they look to replace Rich Bisaccia. I don't know if that will fix the problem because he didn't miss the kick. He didn't fumble the ball. But it was another subpar special teams year. Looking forward to next year and on the draft, and onto the draft in April. I like that perspective, Jeremy. And honestly, I agree with a lot of what you said in there. I think when you look at the game yesterday, you gotta first. I mean, obviously a lot of negatives, but if we had to start off with one of the positives in this thing, I think you got to tip your cap to the defensive performance in that game from Green Bay, because that defensive unit, Jeff Hafley, the entire unit, I thought did an absolutely fantastic job to keep that team in it, to keep that team within striking distance. A game that could have easily been a blowout by halftime with the amount of turnovers and stupid self-inflicted stuff, and then fumbling the opening kickoff. I thought Hafley did a fantastic job with all things considered, and the position that they were put in, some of his play calls and being uber aggressive to try to get after Jalen Hurts, and credit to the players too. I think if there was one positive that we could take out of this thing, and I know it doesn't matter at this point because we're not playing next week and the season's over with, and that. It's just the defense. I think you have to do a fantastic job at the defense, or you got to give a lot of credit to the defense for the fantastic job that they did yesterday. Because again, all things considered, the position that team was put in because of the offensive miscues and turnovers and special teams blunders, and that defense didn't give up. They fought their asses off last night. And if there's one thing that I think can kind of tip your cap to and maybe be proud of as a Packers fan, not trying to say that there's any, moral victories or anything like that. But if there's one thing that you can be proud of, it's that defensive performance, because those guys went out there and absolutely balled out in that game. So major credit to Jeff Hafley in his first year, coming from the college game. I know when that hiring was made, when Matt LaFleur made that hire, Matt LaFleur received a lot of criticism for the hiring and such. But boy, you look at what this defense provided, and yes, they absolutely. I think if there was a game yesterday too, I think this draft's going to be loaded with pass rushers coming in this thing. I know corner might be the top need there, but man, I'd probably want another pass rusher. But Jeremy, you're exactly right. Corner and a pass rusher definitely at the top of the needs for sure over there. But really quick, let's take a phone call from our good buddy, Mr. Seabaum here this morning. Seabaum, good morning, sir. How are you doing?
Good morning, El Capitano. I'll tell you what, I've had better Monday mornings, but you know what? Life goes on, and this globe keeps on spinning around.
Mm-hmm. You're exactly right, man. You're exactly right. What's your thoughts on the whole situation?
Well, I'll tell you what. Unlike most of Packer Nation, I just kind of shut it off, and it is what it is. You know what? Let's just rewind the clock a little bit to last year. We went into last year with zero expectations, right? We thought this was going to suck. First year of Jordan Love, Devontae's gone, Rodgers gone. Nobody thought we were going to win 6 games. And we made it to the playoffs, won a game. Everybody's expectations went straight to Super Bowl. And I don't think that's fair. It's frustrating as a fan to watch us come out blah again in a playoff game, but let's step back and look at the big picture. We're the youngest team in the NFL. We never really put a full game together. We still got to the playoffs, and we were relatively competitive against the Eagles, one of the top 3 teams in the NFC. This team, yeah, we all wanted them to win. We all had, high hopes for them, but realistically, this team was not set to run for a Super Bowl yet. I think that's next year. We need to add a few pieces, and you just touched on a few of them. I'm very optimistic for the future with this team. I'm very excited. Yeah, I'm disappointed we lost, but you know what? I picked it when we talked on the pod. We both knew what the outcome was most likely going to be, and that is what it is. And it didn't help that, there's a lot of things we could point at in this game and complain about, like the helmet-to-helmet contact on the opening play that nobody wanted to talk about on TV, a number of different plays like that. But you know what? Overall, youngest team in the league, got to the playoffs again. Now we're out of Rodgers' salary cap hell, and we can sign a few free agents. I think next year's the year we have to have an expectation. It shouldn't have been this year.
You know what, C-Bomb, I agree with you. And, I think we talked about it last year, getting into the postseason and winning a game. At that point, I think a lot the phrase that was kind of used out there was playing with house money once we got into the postseason and such. And then we beat Dallas. And then, it was competitive against the 49ers. And at that time, I think we talked about it. It moved up the timeline for a lot of Packers fans, right? Like the expectations all of a sudden got a whole lot higher. And I'm one of them. I'll say it. I'm guilty. I had high expectations for this team heading into this year. But I think, for all the shortcomings, I think you got to look at some of the improvements this team made for this year too. Defense, Jeff Hafley, first year. It's trending upward. I mean, when was the last time we felt this good about our defense maybe going forward? Our running game took a jump. Rookies this year contributed in a big way. Your free agents that we got last year in year one were big-time hits, and as you mentioned it, we're out of salary cap hell now too. So not to play the whole there's always next year, but I still feel like this arrow is trending upward for Green Bay, and I'm a little surprised and a little downhearted to see a lot of people thinking it's going down at this point.
I agree 100%. I mean, how many times do you talk about a single player having a sophomore slump? We had a roster full of sophomores, and some of them had slumps. And you know what? They're going to improve. They're going to get better. We're going to have, you already touched on a loaded pass rushing draft. There's plenty of free agent money now. They're going to make a signing or two. The future, the next year we should have the expectation. If we're sitting here in the same spot next year, I'm calling and I'm bitching. This year, yeah, I'm disappointed we lost. Extremely disappointed. I think that we did not play our A game. We played a D game. But you said it, man. Our defense, how often have we had a defense that was better than our offense? Our running game is legit with Jacobs. We had a number of injuries. We're young. We were very undisciplined all season. It showed up again last night. So, I mean, there's plenty of room for improvement, and we're one of the playoff teams. And if we can improve on that, we'll be sitting one of the top seeds next year. That's my expectation next year, is to be a top seed, one of the top 3.
Let me ask you this here quickly, Steve, because you mentioned the word that gets used a lot is undisciplined. It's the same issues with this team and such. How much of that goes into the fact that this is for the second year in a row, the youngest team in the league, and maybe points to the fact that you sprinkle in a few more veterans? Maybe something like that changes, because with the undisciplined and that, a lot of people point the finger to Matt LaFleur at this point. How much blame does he get for that, or do you think that's a direct result of just the youth of this team?
I think it's a little bit of both. And, I mean, LaFleur, everybody kind of is a reflection of your head coach, right? And LaFleur tends to fly off the handle. You see it on the sidelines. People complain about it. And I think that might trickle down a little bit, especially to a young team. But these are professional athletes. You should know better than to slam a quarterback down in a crucial when you're trying to get back in the game at the end of the game and give them a free 15 yards and a first down. That's undisciplined. I mean, that's just lack of discipline by that player. And we had a lot of that this year in sporadic moments. But like you said, sprinkle in a couple veterans. I think McKinney's he's going to have a year on this team. He's definitely going to be a full-time leader next year. Same thing goes for Jacobs. And I think if they had a couple more pieces, like, boy, would I love to see a T. Higgins, regardless of what they're saying in Cincinnati about those 3 wanting to play years together. Bring in a couple key pieces, veteran free agents. I'm excited for the future. I mean, yeah, I'm down that I'm, not happy we lost, obviously disappointed, but let's be realistic here. I don't think any of us really thought this was a Super Bowl roster team yet.
And one more thing, because I know you got to get to work here, C-Bomb, and I appreciate you calling in here this morning, C-Bomb. But, one thing that just is, I know it's not Tuesday. It's not a grind my gears. But this constant narrative from some fans out there that already know how this is all going to play out. Like some people already know that, okay, Matt LaFleur, he's not going to win you a Super Bowl. Or that Jordan Love has already regressed, and now we're back to saying that he's, not the guy at quarterback, that Malik Willis maybe should have a shot to start for this team. Or the fact that we're not going to be able to sign this free agent, that free agent. Why do fans go with this mindset instead of just, being a fan and seeing it all play out at this point? This is the thing that bothers me the most after losses like this.
Yeah, it gets, and I've kind of been one of those fans in the past at some times, but at some point. But let me tell you this, man. People that want to bitch and complain about not having a quarterback, just go south of the border and cheer for that team. Tell me how hard it is to go without a quarterback for decades. You want to bitch about, we didn't get to the Super Bowl, our coach sucks. What do you think of Mike Tomlin? He's been to 8 straight playoffs and lost in the first round. Mike Tomlin's a great coach. You can look at the shortcomings of what you have on your roster all day long, but step back and look at what you really got. We are a playoff contender every year. You want to just throw that away and become the Bears? Go cheer for the Bears. I'm happy with Matt LaFleur. Granted, he pisses me off at times, but not every coach is going to be Vince Lombardi or Bill Belichick, and not every quarterback is going to be Aaron Rodgers or Tom Brady. Sometimes, entitled Packer fans, you have to fight through it with a roster you have of talented players. Love's never going to be Rodgers, people. Quit. He's never going to be better than Rodgers, but he can be a Pro Bowl player. He can be he can win a Super Bowl. Hell, Joe Flacco won a Super Bowl, for crying out loud.
Mm-hmm.
So just enjoy what you have. I mean, look at what you've got and realize that you've got a talented coach, a talented roster, a great front office. You want to complain about a team, go cheer for the Bears. Hell, cheer for the Vikings.
Mm-hmm.
See what they've had to deal with for years.
Right.
We should be happy with what we've got. That's what I got to say. I shouldn't be complaining. It's not a Tuesday. We're getting all fired up.
No, it's just, I mean, it's to the point, too, where I've been seeing people on social media saying that, Jordan Love's already peaked, he's regressed, and all that. I'm like, are we really doing this? Are we really doing this, man? At this point, his second year starting, guy went through, I mean, it's just, I don't know, dude. It's frustrating.
I will also say, I don't want to hear this crap, we paid $160 million for Love. We overpaid. That's the market, people. That's what quarterbacks are getting. He's going to be a top 10 quarterback. He's not going to be Aaron Rodgers, so get that out of your head. He's not a generational talent, but he is a solid quarterback, and he gives us the best chance to win. If we didn't have him, let's ask, who are you going to replace him with?
Malik Willis is the answer.
Hey, Malik Willis did a great job backing up with subtle game plans. If he was an NFL starting quarterback, he never would have been benched or traded to the Packers.
Mm-hmm. No, I completely bingo. You're exactly right, C-Bomb. I agree with you, man. So, hey, I appreciate the phone call this morning, buddy. It's good to hear your voice, man.
Well, good luck for you, my brother. I'm sure you're going to be getting barraged with messages. I hope you can battle through that, and let's look forward to the draft in the off season, and everybody have a safe, stay warm out there. Thanks for having me, El Capitano.
Appreciate it, C-Bomb. There you go. He's off the Shoe Doctors bullpen line here this morning. Mark, C-Bomb, if you're still listening, our good buddy Mark says, damn, I hate to agree with C-Bomb, but he's got it right. Steve from Eau Claire here, I would add a wide receiver as another area of need in the offseason. Watson will likely miss most, if not all, of next season. Dobbs is going to be more concussion-prone going forward. Wicks did not take as big of a step forward this year as many had hoped. I think we need to focus on wide receiver in free agency. I'm also curious as to your thoughts about whether or not Nixon fumbled. Fumbles should have been upheld because I think he recovered it. No, I mean, Steve, I think he recovered it as well. I think that was pretty darn clear. Pretty clear and obvious in the replay, but for whatever reason, they decided to put at the same time, I get it. The ifs, whats, couldas, shouldas, hindsight's 2020 in that, but yeah, oh boy, Anyways, no, I won't go any further than that, there, Steve, because I could say stuff that I could get in trouble. But no, it should have been recovered by Green Bay, and that's my opinion. Mike says, biggest disappointment with the Pack is how much Love digressed. I supported him, but either Matt LaFleur is not helping him or Love is now peaked. What? Come on. It's the same things that was said about him in a draft. Love is not a good decision maker. I realize he is young, but need to show improvement, not go backwards. Oh, boy. Okay. Another texter, not getting T. Higgins, Walker Tom both need to be resigned. Walker Tom Ryan are all about to enter the last year of their rookie deals, but if they are looking to spend money on outside free agents, here's a good place to start. If they even make it to free agency, Tommy Tremble, Drew Dahlman, Milton Williams, DJ Reed, Will Freeze. Another texter, this was a little bit earlier, what a disaster, turnovers, terrible quarterback play, penalties, play calling, undisciplined plays in the fourth quarter with 2 unnecessary roughness after the play is over. Horrible final 3 games. Another texter said, I wish we had Mike Evans. That's all I'll say. That was actually late from last night. So another texter coming in, who said we can't get T. Higgins because they can predict the future in a crystal ball. I hate this mindset from Packers fans that already know how everything plays out. It's like they act like they're the smartest fan base in the building. Go apply for a job at 1265 and put your money where your mouth is, then, people. Another texter says, I would love to get a guy like T. Higgins. I don't know if that is something that they will be able to compete for in the postseason, but I definitely think that they need to address wide receiver in the offseason. What are your thoughts on that? Yeah, I mean, I think you factor in, not even with Christian Watson. Let's say Christian Watson was healthy and such. I think one thing, you do look at wide receiver in the offseason as an addition. You look at the beginning of the year, the whole what was the main topic of conversation when it came to wide receivers is that, do they have a number one? Do they need a number one wide receiver? You had some people saying, yes, they do. You had some people saying, no, they don't. Spread the ball around. Now it's back to a lot of people thinking that maybe, yes, they need another wide receiver out there, or number one wide receiver. So I don't know what the market is going to look like for a guy like T. Higgins and for a lot of these potential unrestricted or free agent wide receivers, whether Devontae is going to be available out there too and such. But I would say that I would not be opposed to bringing in another veteran wide receiver at this point, not necessarily drafting another guy, adding another one into that equation, a veteran one. I don't think would be a bad decision. I do think this team needs more veterans on its roster. I think, talk about all the youth, and I don't want to use that as an excuse, and I know a lot of people don't want to use that as an excuse when it comes to this team, but I think it's something you have to look at in terms of experience and such. And you look at the difference of bringing in veterans like Xavier McKinney and Josh Jacobs did for this team for this season alone. I know I would like to have a few more veterans, a couple more veterans being sprinkled into this upcoming offseason. And for anybody who says Green Bay doesn't do that, you haven't been paying attention to the last few years. Brian Gutekunst is not Ted Thompson. He's not a guy that is just strictly draft and develop. That's still a big, big mindset. That's still like their core there. But he has proven already that he is more active in free agency in his few years as general manager than Ted Thompson was throughout his whole tenure as general manager. So I think more so than not, I would be shocked if we headed into this offseason and we weren't aggressive in maybe free agency, whether it's re-signing some of our own guys. That's always going to be a priority for Green Bay. Probably specifically like a Zach Tom, type of guy over there. That's probably going to be priority number one for that group. But then you look across the board, where are they going to look at? Is it going to be corner? Jair Alexander is going to be a big question mark. Or are they going to look at, some people threw out the idea of Asante Samuel Jr., that sort of stuff. So to me, I would be a little shocked, and in fact, I'd probably be a little disappointed if they weren't a little bit active in free agency this offseason. You look at last year after that playoff, after getting to the postseason, you beat Dallas on the road, and as close as you were to beating San Francisco and advancing to that NFC Championship game, the expectations, we talked about it at this point last year, they moved up. That timeline moved up, and rightfully so. I mean, and the expectations were sky high heading into this year. You had, whether it was local fans or national pundits, national talking heads saying Green Bay is a Super Bowl contender. And I bought into it. A lot of us bought into it. You look at how the season ended last year, and you're like, okay, sky is the limit this year. You bring in Xavier McKinney and Josh Jacobs. That only further moves that needle for the expectation to go higher. And there's nothing wrong with that. I had high expectations for crying out loud this year. But when you kind of let the dust settle a little bit and you look at everything, yeah, maybe they're like at that 1 or 2 years away. Who knows at this point, but maybe the expectations were just a skosh high this year. Maybe just a skosh high. Definitely there was some regression. I don't want to use that word regression. I hate that word regression because I don't think it's 100% accurate. There was some poor play from Jordan Love this year. There's no question about it. His accuracy was off at times. He was inconsistent at times. But how much of that factors in? You had receivers dropping balls left and right. Jaden Reed had a down year, sophomore slump, if you want to call it. Dontavian Wicks had a sophomore slump, if that's what you want to call it. Romeo Doubs had kind of some up and down points of his career this year. Tucker Kraft, I think we can all say, took a step this year. Probably would have liked to have seen him maybe be utilized more or targeted more. The whole debate about number one receivers or not, whether you want to have them or not, I think the main point is in having a number one wide receiver or having a number one target out there is to just have that kind of that safety net, or just to have that, when we got to make a play, when we got to have a play, this is the guy we're going to go to. Brady had Gronk for all those years. He had that guy to go to. Patrick Mahomes, they get flushed in with receivers left and right, whether it's, DeAndre at the back end of his career this year, then you mix in Xavier McKinney, and Rice and that. He's gone through different ones, but his one constant has always been Travis Kelce. If they've needed a play to be made, it was Travis Kelce. That's what I think about for a number one guy, a number one target, receiver, tight end, whatever you want to call it. It's not the guy that's always getting to hit you like 1,500 yards receiving, 1,600 yards receiving, but it's that guy that if you need a play done, and if you need a play, you need to pick up a first down, or you need to move the ball here, or you just got some super confidence in this guy where there's that nonverbal communication, and you're going to target that person, and you're going to come away with the ball. That's what I think about for a number one guy, for a number one target, whether it's a wide receiver or a tight end. And that's what I want to see somebody, I don't think we had that natural progression that maybe a lot of us thought. I thought maybe there was going to be a natural progression this year of somebody kind of going into that number one target. And I don't think we saw that. We saw, Tucker Kraft take a jump. We saw Jaden Reed still put up numbers, but he had issues with holding on to the football and such. But that's where I want to see a number one pass catcher kind of get into the fray here where, okay, if the passing game's a little bit off or you just need to have that play, you want to get your quarterback into a rhythm, that's where that number one guy helps. I mean, Jamar Chase still gets his. Justin Jefferson still gets his. They get all those, but those are guys that you just are super confident in that they're going to make a play. We use that phrase all the time. Who's going to make a play? How many times did Brady say in the telecast yesterday, who on offense is going to make a play? That's what I think about when needing a number one pass catcher, number one target. It's great to spread the ball around, and I want an offense that spreads the ball around. I want an offense that gets everybody involved. But when you need a play, when you need a catch, when you need to extend a drive, to move the sticks, to pick up a first down, or maybe to come away with a touchdown, just to make a big play. That's where I want a number one guy. Jeremy, I agree 100%. Receiver should be a veteran, not through the draft. My biggest disappointment, though, is Kenny Clark. Had huge expectations for him this year, but too many games, he didn't do anything. Hopefully, with the second year in the system, he can really pop next year. Again, Jeremy, I agree with you, man. I think you look at Kenny Clark this year, and you're kind of like, what the heck? Especially, you get the new contract before the season starts, right? You get a nice payday. And I think a lot of us thought, too, is like, okay, Kenny Clark for his entire career was a 3-4 down lineman. And he played well. But I think a lot of us thought, okay, moving into a 4-3, we may see another version of Kenny Clark, a step-up version. And it didn't play that level. It wasn't to that level. I mean, there was times in that game last night, too. I mean, you look at Philadelphia over the years, ever since 2017 when they won the Super Bowl, what's one thing that they've always, always, always invested in? It's defensive fronts. It's the front sevens. Whether it's been Jalen Carter, Brandon Graham for the longest time, Fletcher Cox, those guys, they've always invested up front in defensive linemen. And there were times in that game yesterday where they were putting pressure with 4. They were getting home with 4, and they were getting pressure up the middle. And for anybody thinking that that's the biggest need for Green Bay going forward is that they've got to get some dudes up front, that they got to get some guys that can pressure, that can get after the quarterback. I ain't going to argue with you. This draft supposedly has a deep class of pass rushers. Corner might be the biggest need in terms of depth, but, man, if there's a pass rusher out there, it's going to be hard to say no at that point. Jeff says, I think the defense played a very great game yesterday. My main concern is with Romeo Doubs. How many concussions has it been for him? We may need to find a replacement. He may be done with football. I don't want to say he's done with football yet. I don't want to get to that point. But defensively, again, I know we kind of opened it up, giving some flowers to that group there. That's a fantastic job that they did. I mean, for seeing their offense with the struggles that they had, and the special teams unit for the struggles that they had, for that defense to go out there and still play a magnificent job. That's one thing I think if you're a Packers fan, for all of the disappointment that you have this morning and the frustrations that you have and the finger pointing and this is what I would do and why are they not doing this? If there's one thing you can hang your hat on, is that effort, that defensive effort. Jeff Hafley, ever since he has been there, 2 things he's preached: turning the ball over and effort. Effort, effort, effort. He has talked about that at length throughout this season. You look at that game yesterday, and there was effort all across the board. The Slayton thing towards the end sours it. There's no question about it. It completely sours the whole thing, what he did. Game was probably out of reach at that point anyways, but still, you make a boneheaded thing like that, take that away. Overall, the effort was absolutely there from that group. And you think about it, 3 of their defensive players, too. Main core defensive players were rookies this year. Edgerrin Cooper, Evan Williams, Javon Bullard. Arrows trending upward. I think it's obvious their best unit is when Evan Williams and Xavier McKinney are your back-end safeties. Javon Bullard's more of your nickel guy. Edgerrin Cooper, we've sang his praises how many times this year? Arrows trending upward for him. So in a first year, when you overhaul your defense, you switch from a 3-4 to a 4-3, you bring in a different voice, a different philosophy, and then you're relying on 3 rookies to be regular contributors, big-time contributors, concerning everything over there. I'm super excited about the defense going forward, and I hope they continue to get better. I don't know how the next few years are going to play out. I don't know if we're going to win a Super Bowl in the next few years. But the thing is like, you know what? That's why we watch it. Let's let it play out. I think there's some enthusiasm. I think there's some excitement surrounding this. It may not feel like it right now. A lot of Packers fans arguing with each other, getting into fights with each other, which is disheartening considering we all cheer for the same team. But I think once the dust settles and you kind of look back at everything, it was a season definitely full of ups and downs and inconsistencies and issues across the board. Didn't live up to expectations, and in a year you're not hoisting the Lombardi Trophy. You're probably a little down. You're probably a little disappointed, especially if you're a team that made the playoffs and you don't make it on that stage. You're going to be down and you're going to be disappointed. But when you look at everything and when you look at things going forward, I choose to remain optimistic. I choose to remain positive on the outlook of this team. I choose to look at this and be like, okay, definitely some issues they got to figure out. The inconsistencies on offense, Jordan Love's accuracy, wide receiver, different parts of this. Absolutely, 100%. But I also think there's a lot here to look back at and say, okay, arrow is still trending upward. Total offense still finished 5th overall this season. 5th overall in total offense with the issues that they had on offense. The defense, 5th and 6th. 5th in points. Was it 5th in points or was it 6th in total and then 5th in total? Regardless, there's a lot to like going forward. And I think that's why I choose to remain optimistic with this team, to remain optimistic with who's on this team and who's going to be on this team going forward, whether it's a coach, whether it's a player. Because I think there's a lot to still like with this thing. May not feel like it now. We're less than 24 hours after the game yesterday. It may not feel like it. And there's always going to be emotions that are incredibly high after your team loses in the postseason, after the sudden loss. Your season's done with. You're invested in it for half the year. And then all of a sudden, in the blink of an eye, it's done with. And when you're not hoisting that championship trophy, yes, emotions are going to be incredibly high. But take a little bit, reflect on it, look forward, and I think I'm still bullish on the future of this. Now, I'll go back to where I said that I would be disappointed, or not disappointed, but shocked if LaFleur is not aggressive in free agency again. And I think part of that, too, is you look at the rest of the division. The rest of the division in the foreseeable future is going to be pretty damn good. And for the longest time, by default, Green Bay has just been the dominant team in that division. And I don't think Green Bay can rest on their laurels on that anymore. I don't know if they necessarily have been, but you can't rest on their laurels. Fans can't rest on their laurels. That it's just going to be Green Bay coming in that division. Detroit's going to be there. If they lose their coordinators, do they take a little bit of step back? I don't know. Nobody knows. If Chicago actually gets their head coach hiring correct, they've got playmakers over there. We see what Minnesota's doing over there. This division is going to be a tough one. And by that fact alone, I think Green Bay recognizes that. They know that. They got to get better. They got to get better in terms of talent. They got to get better in terms of coaching. They just got to get better overall. Iron sharpens iron. There's no more just, okay, it's not like 2013, 14, 15, mid-2000s, whatever, where it's like, okay, we got Aaron Rodgers and we got this offense. The rest of the division sucks. We know we're going to win the division and get to the postseason. The division ain't like that anymore. And I hope, and I really hope that with the division, the NFC North overall, being competitive and being better overall, makes this team better. Challenges them to be better. We welcome our good buddy, Mr. Justice Cleveland, sports director, WEAU 13 News, braving the cold temperatures out there. How you doing, buddy?
Perfect that it's cold out on this day, doesn't it?
Cold hearts and everything.
Yeah, exactly.
It was pretty chilly out there this morning. Be careful.
If
you got kiddos at the bus stops and that, make sure they're bundled up here.
Oh, exactly. Gloves, hat, everything. Mm-hmm. Make sure they're not those kids that think they can wear shorts.
Yep.
100 days a year.
I agree.
100 days of the winter.
Really quick, text from Sean. Morning, Dan. With this division as strong as it is, Packers fans need to tone down the expectations. Quarterback, wide receiver, entire defensive line and linebackers are key to winning a Super Bowl, and they all took major steps back. What wide receiver would be above a number 3 of most teams? Loves
a number 3? Oh, come on.
Loves
most teams, too? Do you know how many teams in this league are junk? I was going to say the C word, but come on.
Love stunk all season, hopefully. That was due to early injuries and not a sign of the future, and it's sad that only bright spot on the front 7 was a rookie. Clark and Gary's contracts are going to hold the pack back unless we can trade them both just to save money. Probably not trade. You got dead cap stuff in that, so it's not. Don't want to get into a salary cap situation.
It's not MLB and NBA where you see a lot of the trades for cap reasons. Most times, just they cut you and then
you still have to. That's the one thing with the salary cap in the NFL. Even if you sign somebody to a massive deal, you can't just easily get out of it by trading. You still got to carry the dead cap on that. So, but anyways, Justice already coming in. I like it, man. All right, your thoughts. Let's just jump right into it, man.
It was an ugly game. I'm not going to sugarcoat that part. And obviously, a team that just, if they could find a way to derail their last couple games at the beginning of the games, did so. Mm-hmm. I think it's a team that, I'll put it this way, if this team had missed the playoffs last year and been just, let's say they finished 7-9 last year, made the playoffs this year, would that have been the step? They almost, by overachieving last year, cursed themselves to this year of being like, the expectations were higher than maybe the team was talented enough to reach those expectations yet. That being said, I don't think this team ever hit its stride. Even when they were winning, it just never felt like they were completely 100% in a stride. I think it's a learning year. I know that people don't want to hear that. They're like, this team should be in the Super Bowl. Well, you know what? They're not. But I think it's a year. Brett Favre didn't come in and go to the Super Bowl right away.
Yeah.
Aaron Rodgers didn't come in and go to the Super Bowl right away. It took a couple of years to get there. And I think this team, being as young as they were, took their lumps this year and looked like a young team, making young team mistakes. And a lot of that's going to go on Matt LaFleur because he's got to be the one to make sure that this team's not playing like that, not getting those penalties, not making those mistakes. That being said, the future still, I think, is bright in Green Bay. I know people are all downtrodden like this is the end. It's like, I don't think it's even close to the end. I think Jordan Love, as the last listener said, I hope those injuries are kind of the reason that there was some of these struggles. It just wasn't as consistent as you would like. I think that receiving crew is still young, and maybe you do go get a veteran presence maybe in that receiving crew. I think that, in that locker room probably maybe could use a little more of a veteran presence to kind of be the one that everybody gravitates around. But that being said, it's not the end of the world. I just, that's the take I never like, is like, it's over. There are so many... Cleveland Browns. I just like to throw it. That's the team. Like you could be that team that perpetually stinks and is drafting number 1 quarterbacks after another and not finding anything. Or you could be a team that has somehow find 3 straight starting quarterbacks that could be franchise quarterbacks. I know the book's still out on Jordan Love, but so I know it stinks not to be going to the Super Bowl, but man, there are the expectations of this team. I don't think they're going to be worse next year. I think they're going to be better.
The comparison I threw out maybe a month ago is this team like the 2009 team.
Yeah.
Where it was Dom Capers' first year. They switched defense from a 4-3 to a 3-4. It was Aaron's second year as a starter. You had younger pass catchers kind of in their second, third year. You still had a Donald Driver, a veteran presence on there too. You had a couple of rookies on defense that were asked to contribute big time. B.J. Raji, Clay Matthews, and we know what happened in the playoffs with that year. But that was the sense I kept getting. It was very similar to an 2009 type of year a little bit.
Well,
I would say this year's defense played better than that 2009 defense at that point.
And I would even go back to that like the 92 Favre comes in. They make that run. Don't make the playoffs that first year. That second year, that team had high expectations. I think they went 9-7 and made the playoffs that year, and that was like the Motown Miracle against the Lions. Didn't win a Super Bowl. It took a couple more years. What did they end up getting in that span? that kind of gilded that team together.
Some veterans, Reggie White. You look at even that year, Andre Rison. Eugene Robinson in '96.
Right. So those kinds are probably you're not going to get those right. But if you can get a veteran that can come in and maybe just kind of be the gluing force in that locker room, I think it's helped. But again, let's not write off Jordan Love. There are 20 teams, minimum, that would go after Jordan Love if he was available right now. Mm-hmm. Why would they not? The man has shown that he can make the plays at times when he needs to. Now, again, the end of the season was not what you wanted to see.
Right.
And I don't know how much injuries play into that. I mean, injuries, not only just his injuries, but I mean, the amount of injuries that that happened in that game, that happened the week before. I mean, it's tough for anybody to adjust. I just don't think we ever saw, as well as Josh Jacobs was running, the passing game as complimentary as you would like to see. Mm-hmm. I think that passing game has more that they could have given, and it just never clicked as much as you would thought it would have with the amount of talent on that wide receiving crew. And again, that crew is never together. I don't know how many games that those guys were healthy, but it's not much.
The one thing, and I don't know if we'll ever know the answer to this, I would say the one thing I would like to know is, was that knee, groin, whatever the case, still a lingering thing? Because it felt like Jordan wasn't under center a whole lot, where you didn't see a whole lot of play action,
right?
Utilizing that, and a lot of times you see, quarterback in that shotgun because there's something else going on a little bit there. I don't know. I could just be throwing, but I know that's one thing.
Yeah,
a lot of people's like, okay, what's going on here? Why is there no play? Was there some lingering effect still going on? I don't know.
And there was a play, I think it was either in the late third or early fourth, where he took it and he had like the middle of the field to run, and instead tried to dump it off to the side.
Yeah, it was like a side pass over there to Emmanuel Wilson.
He goes, at least he's getting 5 yards.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Maybe even not, maybe even 10.
Yep.
And he just kind of looked like he's like, no, I don't really want to take that chance. So Jordan Love's the one who knows, and the coaching staff probably knows, what were his limitations. And it stinks that you never really got to see. I mean, the glimpses were there, and again, that stretch where he was just lights out again, the Toyota-thon, whatever you want to call it, stretch that he had.
By the way, Toyota, can we extend Toyota-thon to more than just, a month or two?
Yeah.
So
but it's an ugly way to end a season that came in with some pretty high expectations. But I don't think it's any way to say, okay, let's just reset this thing. Do you want to be the Dallas Cowboys?
Yeah.
People will go, Jerry Jones, but he's going to spend the money. It's like Jerry Jones doesn't spend the money, and you might think that team's the highest valued team in the NFL, and they're not in the tournament.
Right.
This Packer team has been in the tournament the last 2 years, and I feel like they'll be there again next year. I know people are like, well, Detroit, Minnesota. Well, yeah, Minnesota won how many games by 2 points? Yes, they won them, but it could have easily been, they could have been 500 team if things go the wrong way. So this division's not wrapped up.
And I think I'm glad you brought up Minnesota here too, because I was thinking about this yesterday, and you talk about the experience and such. The difference I think Minnesota did this past offseason, and you look at the average, they brought in veterans to help with this group, right?
Yep.
Greenard, Van Ginkel, Aaron Jones, to pair up with these. And I agree with you. I would like to see sprinkle in a couple of veterans into this. Yes, it's the second year in a row it's the youngest roster in the NFL. And I don't think that's something that they go in every year. Hey, Brian Gutekunst.
Yeah, we want to be the youngest.
Yeah, we're going to be in the I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that they had to get out of that Aaron Rodgers dead cap hit.
Mm-hmm.
David Bakhtiari's contract situation they had to clear through. All that stuff. Coming into this next offseason, by all accounts, they're going to be out of that. And that's where I would like to see. I mean, we saw the benefits of adding a Xavier McKinney and a Josh Jacobs to this team.
Right.
You add in a couple more of those, then that changes things. And I think that's a big reason why Minnesota surpassed a lot of expectations this year. And that's not I think, you had Brian Flores in his second or third year over there. You gave him a couple veterans to work with on that defensive side.
I even go with the Philadelphia. Fangio comes over there. You get somebody like Bond, and you get a couple other guys just brought in there, and that defense went from 31st to one of the top in the league.
Yeah,
and the Packers were right there. I think we saw with Heffley working through figuring out who are his guys.
Yep,
and that might mean some of those bigger names might be out
Yep.
next year. So, yeah, I think you're really trying to figure out. I think they did a fine job yesterday. When your offense isn't doing anything and they put you in bad situations, like that first, to have the first play.
Yeah.
The
defense played their ass off yesterday.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, exactly. And they kept them in that game. Mm-hmm. And it was still a game into the fourth quarter. Mm-hmm. You had a chance.
Yeah.
Stupid penalties, though, that's things you just can't have.
Exactly.
And that's just been something that somehow in big games, the Packers got to keep their heads.
Yeah, it's just shooting themselves in the foots again with this. And is that the youth that comes through it? And then you got, how much blame do you put on the coaching? Like, I don't want to absolve coaching by any means of this, because I do think it starts from the coaching. But at a certain point, you can't hold their hands anymore, and the players just have to perform, and they have to go out there and do their jobs too.
Yeah. You hear that whistle, why are you throwing a guy down to the ground? Mm-hmm. Even like Keyshawn's, I know people are like, oh, it wasn't much. He was just making a hand gesture. It's like, you're out of bounds. Mm-hmm. You have your hands on a star player in the league, and you shove him?
Yeah.
What are you expecting?
Stars are going to get the calls.
Exactly. Yeah. What are you expecting to happen? I know it was slow motion, it looks worse than it does in real time. Mm-hmm. But you still can see why they would call it. Mm-hmm. He's 3-4 yards out of bounds. You're pushing him into the guy's holding the first down marker and stuff. It's just like, it's bad optics. You gave the ref an excuse to call the flag, and then Slayton's,
that was just, I don't know if that was the frustration at that point coming through and everything, because, that's where I gave the defense a lot of credit for like 3.5 quarters, because, we're all human. At some point, there had to be some guys like, okay, is anybody else going to help us?
Right.
Offensively especially, is anybody else going to help us? We're doing our job, and we're kicking some, what out there.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it just got to that point where it was like, F it. That frustration, just like, screw this.
Well, even, like, say the fumble to start. Do you blame Rich Bisaccia for an all-pro fumbling?
Yeah.
How do you blame, you can't really put that on Rich Bisaccia. This is Keyshawn Nixon. This guy was 2 years ago an all-pro at returning. So you have one of the best in the league there doing it. He fumbles. Is that Rich Bisaccia's fault? I can't really put that on him. Mm-hmm. McManus was money for almost the whole season.
We wanted him resigned last week.
Yeah. And he ends up pushing a field goal. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I can blame Rich Bisaccia on that.
Yeah.
So it's just like, it's a tough situation where things just really almost a perfect storm of the mistakes that you can't make against big teams. Mm-hmm. And the Packers made them. And that's where it comes on LaFleur to look at this for next year and see, what do we need to do different in our procedure in these big games? Because what we're doing is not working.
And that's where, I know maybe I'm in the minority. I don't think I'm in the minority. I think it's just a loud minority that want Matt LaFleur fired and gone after this. But I will, and I'm not one of those. No. I am not even close to being one of those. But I will say that there is one thing that I think Matt LaFleur has to figure out, is what you just said. Is, I know he talked about the self-reflection and all that, and fans at this point, less than 12, they don't want to hear the coach speak.
Right.
They don't want to hear that stuff. And I think for fans in general, don't take pressers so seriously for comments made from coaches and that, because you're not going to get truthful, heartfelt answers a whole lot up there. They're not going to spill their guts. They're going to try to be professional and just not give you anything.
They're not going to throw anybody under the bus.
Right.
That's their job, is to keep that locker room united. You go out there and you start harping on one thing, throwing people. That's how quickly you can. Mm-hmm. This could fall apart.
Yeah.
So Matt LaFleur's not going anywhere.
No.
Again, same with the Jordan Love. Matt LaFleur's gone. Matt LaFleur has a job.
Yeah.
In 48 hours. Mm-hmm. Matt LaFleur's probably down in Chicago as their head coach. If
that's true.
So he's got the best record through that, second best record throughout that span in the career in the NFL history. Yeah, you don't like the playoff results, but Andy Reid didn't have great playoff results for his first.
How much does, and I'm glad you brought it in, how much does the Patriots and Chiefs' success over the years kind of like almost ruined it for everybody else?
Oh, I think
that
it
expectation is so high now.
And I think that's because the Packers had talented players, especially during the Patriots run.
Yep.
Where you go and you had Favre and you had Rodgers during that. Mm-hmm. And you really only got one Super Bowl because Favre didn't have his Super Bowl until against the Patriots. That was the Bill Parcells Patriots. So, I think it's put this on. I think Steelers are probably dealing with the same thing with Mike Tomlin and like the fact that they haven't won a Super Bowl in a while,
haven't won a playoff game in a while,
right? So I think those teams just having that success, every fan base wants their team to be that team, and I just think it's the perfect storm of things to happen. And sometimes you don't get every piece together, and it's hard to put those pieces together if they don't just fall in the right way. And I think the Chiefs, it's fell the right way with getting Andy Reid and getting Patrick Mahomes at the same time, basically. Yep. And then with the Patriots, I mean, to have Tom Brady and Bill Belichick, and then it just. I'm not going to discount the front offices either for doing a good job.
Right. So
that's where also the proof is it's going to come on Brian Gutekunst this offseason as well to figure out what those pieces are.
And I think too, we can't necessarily, and this isn't trying to make excuses for anything like that, but it's at this point, looking at this division going forward, for the longest time, it wasn't that long ago, but for the longest time in the 2010s, it was. We know Green Bay is going to win a division because everybody else in the division sucks.
Yeah. Chicago had a couple of years where they were with Cutler, they were there. But, yeah, for the most part, and the Vikings would make a run one year and then fall off the next year.
Yeah. I mean, we could just kind of rest on our laurels. It's like, okay, Aaron's the quarterback. Offense is going to be good. We're going to win a division.
Yeah.
That sort of stuff.
If anything, win the division. They might not have the greatest record, but they're going to win the division and get in.
Yep. I think that's changed with the division at this point. Detroit, even if they lose both their coordinators, I don't know if it'll take a hit. It might. I don't have a crystal ball. I'm not going to sit here and say it. It might. But the culture that Dan Campbell and what the front office has done over there has been pretty solid. I think what we're seeing in Minnesota right now, whatever happens at that quarterback position, they've got other players over there, and they've got something going. If Chicago actually hires the right guy, we know they got young talent down there too. And I think that also puts a premium on Matt LaFleur and Goody going forward. Like, we can't rest on those laurels. Iron's going to sharpen iron in this division. Yeah. It's going to be a tough division. But I'm still optimistic going forward. Like, I choose to be optimistic in this case. I know it stinks. And if you're not the team that's hoisting the Lombardi, you're a team that made the playoffs and you fell short, yes, you're going to be upset. You're going to be down in that. But let's also have a bigger picture type of feel with this thing and look at this. And that's why I choose to be optimistic. I see the youngest roster in the league. I see cap space coming. I see a team that you can make a lot of cases improvements from this year compared to last year. And I agree with you. I think, we said it at the end of last year. It's like, okay, they set that bar higher and that timeline moved up just because of what they did.
Yep.
And it was like, all right, let's go for it now. When really we probably should have pumped the brakes a little bit here. But given everything here, that's why I still choose to be optimistic, because they still finished 5th in overall offense. Right. They finished top 5 in defense, number 5 over there. I choose to be optimistic with this because I don't see an arrow trending downward.
No.
Yes, there's bad things and there's stuff that you want to see improved, but I still choose to be optimistic with this.
That defense playing as well as they did, missing basically their best defensive back, too. And you have a guy in Edrin Cooper who is turning heads and is, if anybody was a breakout,
probably their most instinctive linebacker they've had in years.
Yeah. I mean, you have a guy like that everybody's, is opened eyes in the league. So there are so many things. You're again, on offense, you just never had everybody at the same time, and maybe
besides the offensive line,
and then of course, then that happens. It destructs during the playoffs here. So, I think people. Yeah, I can see where there's that look at the Lions and Vikings. It's tough, but I would be cautiously optimistic going into next year because I think they still have the talent to make that and if they can work out those kinks, especially in the big games. That's a big thing. You got to get those big game kinks out of the way.
Yep.
Then you're fine. I think it's looking back to like the Favre era of Dallas was always in the Packers' way.
Yeah.
Once you figured out how to beat those teams, you should be a chance for a Super Bowl is always going to be there then.
And I think that's the thing. If I were to tell Matt LaFleur and his whole self-reflection thing, and the thing is, you may have an idea. We're not going to know until they're in a big game next year whether they've got stuff figured out,
right?
To win those. But that would be the one criticism or the one thing I would like to see different is going to be the big games, because ultimately it's going to be, at a certain point, it probably is like that for a lot of fans right now. Is like, okay, so going to the playoffs isn't enough.
I don't think, for a lot of fans, it's never going to be.
Yeah. Yep.
Because they've made the playoffs so often. You get that kind of, I always call it the Atlanta Braves syndrome, where a team is so dominant or so good for so long that just making the playoffs is enough. You need to be in that final game. So I think that's, unfortunately, almost something you build up as being a successful franchise is you're good. It's Brewers the same way. Brewers are making the playoffs every year, but man, you really want
that next step.
Yeah. So
you want the hardware.
But again, there's the flip side of that is being a team that has had no success and is battling to make the playoffs once every 10 years. So I think they're on a good side of that coin. People have to realize that. It's just, I understand where it's just tough not being that team that year.
Would it be fair to say that kind of LaFleur is entering this season, this upcoming next offseason, but he just finished his second season with the team because when he took over, you had Aaron, you had Devontae, you had all these veterans, right? You know, Goody signs Zadarius, Preston, Adrian Amos. It was like he took over a team that missed the playoffs, but GM comes in. I've got a veteran quarterback at the back end of his career. I've got Devontae. I've got these places. We're going to give you more veterans. And then when they missed the postseason, everything wiped clean. You have brand new wide receivers, young receivers. You got a new quarterback. You're kind of changing things on defense. Is it fair to say LaFleur kind of wrapped up his second season with a completely different team almost in that sense?
Oh,
you know
I
what
think
I'm trying
so.
to say?
It's two different eras. It really is. It's the Rodgers era and then the post-Rodgers era. It really is. And they are two distinctive teams. You can really feel it that way. So, yeah, I think it's, again, a young team that is making young mistakes that you, as a head coach, it's his job here coming up in year 3 of that team to figure out who are the leaders, who are the guys that aren't going to keep making these mistakes, and who are the guys that are going to step up and be that top tier people. So they're going to have decisions to make this offseason. They got to figure. I think offensively, the running game I love. They got to figure out why they weren't able to hit as much on some of those pass plays, because that should be freeing up people. And if that's Jordan Love, you look at him and you say, hey, clean up some of those mechanics. Stop throwing off the back foot as much as you do.
Don't need to do the Jordan Kobe fadeaways.
Right. I think the pass was at Malik Heath, the one where he was just had his toe on the line.
Yep.
As much as that's on Malik Heath, that's more on Jordan Love because he threw that ball high and hit him in the numbers. He catches that ball and then steps out of bounds. Instead, you throw it up. He has to try to dot the. So there's just little things like that you need to clean up.
It's the inconsistency because before that 10-2, the dot he threw to Dontavian Wicks in like triple cut. There's those plays where it's like, okay, now here we go.
And those people that are so quick to jump off the Jordan Love. It's been so much on off. It's like I've seen posts like I don't think he's the guy. It's 2 years. 2 years that he's played very much above replacement in the NFL.
Yeah.
The results in the playoffs haven't been what you want, but I am not one to jump off the Jordan Love bandwagon because, like I said, there'll be teams would just be lining up to have a quarterback like him.
I agree.
Under center. So.
I agree. I believe this is from a text, Doug, who is one of our resident Lions fans, along with Tom from across the pond. If this is not the Doug, I apologize, but Doug says, you should be very optimistic. They are young. Lots of coaching changes in the North next year. It kills me to hear Packers fans saying to fire him.
I'm not surprised. I'm never surprised. I've lived through 2 Hall of Fame quarterbacks when people were ready to move on from them at times, too. So it happens, and it's tough. It's that forlorn feeling of we're not going to win a Super Bowl this year. And that's what the fans are feeling right now. Can I just say it too? Would this year just feel off in a way of just like the schedule wise and just like nothing ever felt consistent, especially that second half after the bye. Because you go Sunday, Thursday, Sunday, Monday, Sunday. It was just a weird, like it never felt like even as a fan watching, the season got into like just a pattern. It was just a weird, different season when it comes to that. Starting on Friday. Yeah. And then they had those 3 like straight noon games, but then it was just a different feel when it comes to this season. I don't know if as a player you feel that, which I think they might feel it, like just never getting into that routine weekly. But that's, they're professionals, they can deal. But even just thinking about it last time, like, man, it was just kind of a fast season, it felt like, and just kind of a weird way with the start times this year. But that's the NFL. I think that's where we're going to head to more in that with the way the NFL is now.
And not to keep bringing up the youth thing and the experience thing over there too, but you look at guys like Edgerrin Cooper, Evan Williams, Bullard, and et cetera. They really haven't had an off time yet.
Right.
They got done with their college years, then they're in the draft process, and then they play 10, 11 games in their college career. So after they get to the draft process, then they're with their team, and then they're practicing nonstop, and then they almost got to play a double schedule than what they're used to. You hear rookies all the time talk about that adjustment over there. And I think a lot of times, too, is maybe that's where you see the sophomore slump for some of the guys because, all right, they finally have an off, where they kind of like, then they got to adjust to their new schedule at that point. And I don't know if that was an issue with Reed this year or Dontavian Wicks. There's one thing that I've learned over the years is I'm not judging a wide receiver after 2 years in Green Bay.
Yeah.
I'm not judging that. We've gone through that road how many times? And Devontae, I'll just say, people want him gone after the second year.
Oh, he's never going to be able to fill the shoes of Jordy, because he couldn't come in that second year and replace an All-Pro.
Right.
Or a Pro Bowler. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, that wide receiving crew, I think, can just be – I think we just expected more because they're all so talented. Mm-hmm. And I just think injuries caught up to them. If not from Jordan Love being injured first game, then you had to go kind of a run-based offense because you had Malik Willis just stepping in after 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And then when Love got healthy, then the receiving crew, you had the Romeo situation.
Yep.
Watson just unfortunately cannot stay on the field 100%. Mm-hmm. Everybody was kind of just banged up on that, so you never really saw them at 100%. And I really would love to see. I think the only guy that maybe was out there 100% is Tucker Kraft.
And he's the guy who I think if you had to pick somebody offensively that took a step this year, it's probably Tucker Kraft.
Oh, I would totally agree. I mean, with him and Jacobs, those were the two guys you could rely on. And unfortunately, the rest of them were kind of getting shuffled in and out. So, coming into next season, Watson probably not ready.
Yeah.
But the rest of those guys, you come in healthy. Jordan Love, hopefully healthy. Love to see how they can come out of the gate next year.
And I think that's where I go back to the whole, do they need a number one? Do they not need a number one? I think they need a number one, but not in the essence where they need a guy that's going to get you 1,600 yards.
Right.
I look at a number one as like, okay, if somebody needs to make a play, that's the guy we're going to go to.
Yeah.
Even Brady had all those different receivers, but he had a Gronk. Patrick Mahomes, they shuffle in all these receivers. They still have a Kelsey. That guy that if you need a play to be made, a throw to be made, that's the guy to go to.
Yeah.
That's the only thing that I want to see being emerged from these passing catchers.
And it'll be interesting to see in the offseason if they go after maybe a veteran in that situation. I just don't know. Don't overspend.
Right.
A guy from the Jets that said he was he'd come back. It's like, it's not happening.
You don't think Devontae, old 17, would come back? T. Higgins is out there.
There are going to be guys, and I think a veteran.
The wide receiver market's so hard to kind of figure out, though. Too. That's the thing. I don't think they need to bring in a tight end. I'm good with what they got with Kraft and Musgrave.
I think if you can get Musgrave back healthy a whole season, another one. Another one. You just the hits that they kind of took this season. If you really dissect this year, it's been discombobulated is kind of the feeling in my mind of a season that could have been so much better, and it just never got to that point.
Mm-hmm. First of all, John says, I'm not saying, but I'm just saying that Rich Bisaccia won't be back with the team next year. His special teams have had too many mistakes the last couple of years. That is definitely something that I've seen quite a few fans talk about on social media, is whether Rich Bisaccia is going to be back next year or not. That I have no idea either way to begin with. I don't even know how I would even wager a guess, because I know Matt LaFleur likes him a lot, and I know he's incredibly well respected around the league. His players love him. Josh Jacobs has been on record how many times saying that was a big reason why he came over to Green Bay. But at what cost then, too? It's like, okay, if the issue's on special teams, as a direct relation to the coaching and the mindset there, do you make that move then? That's going to be an interesting one this offseason. I really do think that's going to be a very interesting one. Another texter said, with all the talk about the ability to have to make some moves in the offseason, just how much does Green Bay have in the offseason? Well, let's look at Spot Track. So they've got it for this upcoming offseason. Top 51 in cap space. You're looking at about $63.4 million available in cap space right now. Just for argument's sake, let's say they release Jair Alexander. That would jump it up to about little over $70 million in available cap space, gaining about $6.8 million. Now, you do have a dead cap hit with that over there, but it does give you a little bit more flexibility. If they decide, I'm not saying they should, or they're going to, but if they decide to release Jair Alexander, then you're looking at maybe around $70 million. But if they keep him, you're talking about this is according to Spot Track numbers out there. So these are not official. These are kind of like estimations and such over there. So, but that's kind of the amount, and we don't know the exact salary cap number next year or for this upcoming offseason. We know it's going to be bigger. Probably not as big of a jump, they're saying, as last year's, but that's where you kind of look at. Now, they're probably going to, I would assume, approach Zach Tom. I think Zach Tom's going to be an interesting contract negotiation. With the right tackle and such, but they're probably going to want to see if they can lock him up. And then maybe some of their other guys on the roster here, but that's kind of where you're looking at some of the flexibility. Like Andrew Brandt just tweeted out a few minutes ago here with the Packers. The Packers have an ascending roster that was, again, the youngest in the NFL, a healthy cap situation with Rodgers now off the books, and Andrew Brandt wouldn't know about cap situations, and signed 2 Pro Bowlers in free agency last year. And as I know well, an excellent scouting department. It hurts now, but they will be fine. I think they will be too. I think they will be too. But I think 2025, this upcoming next year, is going to be a big-time evaluation year too, to see where everything stands. Some more texts out here. Mark from EC says Matt LaFleur play calling and time management down the stretch and the playoffs go very generic, poorly managed, lack of play action from under center really hurt Love's play. It's something I brought up with Justice last hour was the play action, and that's where part of me is like wondering, and I don't know if we'll know the true answer, full on answer, but was there still something going on with Love in that knee, groin, or something going on? Because a lot of times when you see quarterbacks that play primarily in shotgun, or a lot of times in shotgun, you see a lot of that is because they're dealing with an injury or such. I don't know if that's the case with Love. I would love to know that answer, and I don't think we'll ever get the true answer on that. But you're right. I think that was one thing that really hindered this passing offense. With all the success that they had with Josh Jacobs in the running game, to not have that play-action game going, to not have Jordan Love on the center a lot more, and not utilizing that play-action, I think was a big reason why this passing game maybe was, at the very best, very questionable towards the end, and just not a lot of consistency over there. That is definitely, like, if we get to, like, if I could ask, get Matt LaFleur for a question here, and be like, okay, what was it? I mean, there'd be a lot of questions, but I know one question I'd have on my short list for Matt LaFleur. What was it about, why did it feel like we got away from play action so much? Why did it feel like that wasn't utilized as much with Josh Jacobs being such a threat for opposing defenses? Why was it that it felt like we kind of got away with it? Was there something going on with Love? Was there still some lingering effects to it? Was there something else? What was the mindset behind that? Because I would agree with that. and I've seen other people talk about that too, with the play action. That was definitely kind of a head scratcher a little bit. And I think that was such a thing that really helped Love down the stretch last year. Yes, he was playing some really great ball, but a big reason was because Aaron Jones was also playing some really good ball. Aaron Jones was finally healthy, and he was running the ball. He was getting over 100 yards a game, and with that, you had more play action, which helped Love in the passing game, and it helped those receivers. That complementary football that you always talk about. So, yeah, I definitely would like to see, or to know that answer. Again, we'll probably never know. But with all the self-reflection and the self-scouting that this offense, that this whole team is gonna go through this offseason, that's one thing I would like to see more of, getting back to that play action. Utilizing that a little bit more. But when we look at this season as a whole, obviously there's a lot of negative feelings right now when you're coming off of a loss, and it's a bitter taste, and you look at the last couple of weeks and such. It stinks. It sucks. And you're in the dumps, and I hate it myself. And you don't want to see your season end on a dime just like that. It's the finale right there. You go into the game not knowing if you're going to have a game next week to cheer for, or this is going to be it, and the finality of it is what it just stinks, especially when you're not the team that's hoisting the trophy. But when you look back at this season, if you had to pick a positive note, if you had to pick a positive aspect from this season, what is that positive aspect? What is that positive thing? I think the big one's probably defense that a lot of people are going to pick, Jeff Hafley and what he's done. We've talked about the defense quite a bit this morning. I think that's probably an easy one. That's towards the top. I think you're going into like, okay, I'm feeling really good. I mean, this year we went into this season with a cautiously optimistic approach for the defensive side. Like, okay, you're loving what you're hearing from Hafley. He's saying all the right stuff in his pressers and interviews and comments, right? The campaign speeches from Jeff Hafley was like, okay, this is hitting home. I love this mindset. This is going to be fun. And there were some hiccups. There were some like, okay, you probably wanted to see more from the pass rush, right? We all wanted to probably see more. There was probably some other things over there. But overall, when you finish how they did, and when you look at the season the totality of the season from the defensive side, I think that's easily a positive thing. And that arrow's trending upward. If you want to pick something from the offensive side, obviously Josh Jacobs is a part of that. I mean, that run that he had. You want to talk about a guy who played with heart yesterday? I know I said defensively, those guys with the effort that they played to keep that team in position. Josh Jacobs, and that signified on that run. You all know what run I'm talking about. Up the middle, down on the goal line there. I was watching the game downstairs in the man cave, and I could hear my wife upstairs hooting and hollering on that play, on that run. I mean, that's a play right there, and I think Brady even hit it on the head too. When you're the defense and you see somebody out there making a play like that, how does that not get you fired up? How does that not get you inspired? Josh Jacobs is all heart. And if you go and listen to some of his comments after the game when he was doing some media sessions and such, I mean, he was taking the end of the season, the loss, pretty hard. He kind of, he was making comments. He feels like, kind of, blaming himself a little bit and such. And nobody's blaming Josh Jacobs, right? Nobody is doing that. But that's the kind of competitor that he is in this thing. And maybe one thing that Packers fans will like to hear, in case you didn't see it, Jacob said too, as far as next year's roster, he says, I know I'm going to try and get some guys in here, most definitely. So, but Josh Jacobs, man, that was a move. I know that was met in the offseason with mixed reviews. A lot of good ones, a lot of positive ones, but when you replace a guy that is beloved as much as Aaron Jones, there's going to be some question marks, especially the way Jones finished last year too. There's going to be some, I don't know. But what he provided to this team this year, and that run alone kind of signified, I think, what Josh Jacobs has meant to this team this year and maybe going forward. The heart, the grind, the effort, the hustle, the physicality that he can bring, the leadership that he can bring. I mean, that run alone kind of encompassed everything that Josh Jacobs has done and has meant for this team this year. Rashawn Gary, this was a quote that he had when he was asked in the locker room. This is from Ryan Wood. Rashawn Gary asked in the locker room how he felt after losing the playoffs. Sick, mad, every emotion that you can feel. We worked for this all offseason, all OTAs, and all camp to punch a ticket to the playoffs and to come short. Everybody that's on the second half of the season wants to hold up that Lombardi trophy. We came short this year, so the message is to hold on to that feeling. You go into training and you're about 3 months into just grinding and you just get tired. Think about this moment, and I promise you, if you think about this moment, it's going to light a fuel underneath your butt and you're going to get back to working. So that's the message from Coach, man, and I'm re-emphasizing it. Hold on to this. Hold on to this. It's only going to make us stronger and better. Some other comments from players in the game. Josh Jacobs. Going back to Josh Jacobs, I saw this from Matt Schneider. I forgot to bring this up. Our locker room is going to be different. We got some guys due for a contract this year. We don't know what's going to look like, how that's going to shake out, but I know I'm going to try to get some guys here. So that was the full quote about trying to get some guys over there too. So, got a tweet here from Troy. Not trying to beat a dead horse, but I feel the way this offense is built, you need play action, especially the tight ends we have. Also, that allows your deep threat to get behind the defense too. Speaking of tight ends, how about Kraft wide open in the end zone? Yeah, I know which play you're referring to there. Now, I know Love was kind of scrambling and going the opposite way at that point. So, I mean, for us to see it on the tube and the TV, it's probably a little bit easier to factor that one in and say he's open, throw it over there and such. But, again, I'm not on the field and I'm not, getting chased by a 300-pound offensive lineman and trying to not take a sack or anything in that situation. So, all right, we got to take a quick break. We'll do some picks and predicts. Final call for any texts or tweets, comments on the video stream, wrapping up the game from yesterday and kind of wrapping up this regular season and such. All right, let's get to some more texts here before we do some picks and predicts. We got one more playoff game here tonight. So we'll make that pick for sure. John says, Packer season may not have ended the way we had all hoped for, but it was still an improvement from last year. We just got to learn from our mistakes this year and do better next year. I know it's a cliche thing to say, but it's true. Could be worse. We could be Bears fans. Josh says, you can't dwell on yesterday too much, but you damn well better learn from it. The offense needs to be more consistent from game to game. The defense needs playmakers, and special teams needs an overhaul. Packers must strike in free agency in 25 and hit on draft picks. Next season will go a long way in telling if Matt LaFleur is the guy going forward. Josh, I would agree with that. I would agree with that last sentence of yours. Next season will go a long way. I agree. I think you can make the case for that. 100%. I'm not on the train to fire him now. I'm not on the train that he should be on the hot seat. But I do think that next year can tell us quite a bit. I would 100% agree with that. Thank you for the text there, Josh.